You're nothing but a useless burden, my brother snapped, tossing my clothes outside. Get out! No one wants you here, his wife scoffed. I didn't argue and simply walked away. 3 days later, they were in a panic. My inbox was overflowing with 30 unread emails, desperately begging for help. The autumn air was crisp, the scent of pine needles filling my lungs as I stood on the lawn, my belongings scattered around me like the debris of a life I thought I knew. The stars above twinkled with a cruel indifference as I faced the harsh reality of being cast out from the only home I'd ever known. My brother Michael, once the golden child, and his wife Jessica, had turned our family home into their stage, and I was no longer part of the act. Their words, sharp and dismissive, echoed in my mind. You're nothing but a useless burden. But, as I gathered my things, a question burned within me. What had driven them to this point? The answer, I knew, would unravel the facade of perfection they so meticulously maintained. And as I walked away, the door slamming shut behind me, I couldn't help but wonder what secrets lay hidden behind their polished smiles. The scent of pine needles and the crispness of the autumn air filled my lungs as I stood there, staring at the heap of my belongings scattered across the lawn. The sky above was a canvas of deep blues and purples, the stars just beginning to twinkle, indifferent to the drama unfolding below. I am Emily Carter, and I've always been the odd one out in my family. Growing up, I was the quiet, bookish type, often overshadowed by my charismatic and outgoing brother, Michael. Michael, with his booming voice and easy smile, had always been the golden child, especially after he married Jessica, a stunning, ambitious woman who seemed to fit perfectly into our family's mold of success. The tension had been brewing for months. Michael and Jessica had moved into our family home after my parents passed away, turning it into a showcase of their perfect life. I, on the other hand, was struggling with my freelance writing career, often retreating to my small, cluttered room to work. One chilly autumn evening, the air was thick with unspoken grievances. Michael, his face flushed with frustration, stormed into my room. "You're nothing but a useless burden," he snapped, his voice echoing through the house. Clothes were tossed out of my closet, landing in a heap on the front lawn. "Get out! No, one wants you here," Jessica scoffed, her disdain palpable. I didn't argue. With a heavy heart, I gathered what I could carry and walked away from the only home I'd ever known. The door slammed shut behind me, the sound like a final judgment. As I walked down the street, the weight of their words pressed down on me. What could possibly drive Michael and Jessica to such harsh words? The answer was not immediately clear, but the seeds of discontent had been sown long before this moment. Michael had always been the center of attention, the life of every party, the one who could charm anyone into anything. Jessica, with her sharp mind and sharper tongue, complemented him perfectly. Together, they were an unstoppable force, leaving little room for anyone else in their orbit. My parents' passing had only intensified this dynamic. The house, once filled with warmth and laughter, had become a stage for Michael and Jessica's performances. They redecorated, turning every room into a testament to their success, their style, their life. My room, with its walls lined with books and cluttered with papers, was the last bastion of the old life, the one I clung to, perhaps too desperately. The eviction was not just about space or clutter. It was about control, about erasing the remnants of a past they no longer wanted to acknowledge. Michael's outburst was the culmination of months of silent battles, of me being the silent, unwanted reminder of a time when they weren't the sole focus of the family's attention. I remember the last family dinner before everything changed. The tension was palpable, the air heavy with unspoken words. Michael had announced some grand business venture, and Jessica had spoken of her latest promotion with the first. Night was spent in a cheap motel, the kind where the neon sign flickers like a heartbeat. I lay on the bed, staring at the water-stained ceiling, replaying the scene over and over. Michael's voice, harsh and unyielding, echoed in my mind. "You're nothing but a useless burden." Jessica's sneer, her words like daggers. "Get out! No one wants you here." The pain was raw, a fresh wound that throbbed with every heartbeat. The next day, I found a small apartment in a less savory part of town. a place where the rent was low and questions were few. The walls were thin, and the sounds of the city at night were a constant companion. I set up my laptop, my lifeline to the world, and began to rebuild my life. Freelance work trickled in, but it was enough to keep me afloat. I avoided contact with Michael and Jessica, their words a constant reminder of my supposed worthlessness. Days turned into weeks, and I started to find a rhythm in my new solitude. I wrote, pouring my heart into stories that no one might ever read. I read, losing myself in worlds where I wasn't the outcast. And I walked the city streets, finding solace in the anonymity of urban life. Each step was a declaration of my independence, a small victory against the shadow of rejection. But what was happening back at the family home? I imagined Michael and Jessica basking in the glow of their self-made perfection. The house once, a sanctuary of love and laughter, now a shrine to their ambition. They must have redecorated my old room, erasing every trace of me. Perhaps they turned it into a guest room, or maybe another space to showcase their achievements. The thought stung, but it also fueled my resolve. I pictured them hosting lavish parties where the laughter was forced and the smiles were for show. Michael, ever the charmer, would be the life of the party, his voice booming over the crowd. Jessica, with her sharp wit, would navigate the room with the precision of a seasoned politician, her eyes scanning for opportunities. In the quiet moments, when the guests had left and the house was silent, did they ever think of me? Did they ever feel a pang of guilt for how they treated me? Or was I just a footnote in their grand narrative, a necessary casualty in their pursuit of perfection? I wondered if they missed the simplicity of our family dinners, the warmth of genuine conversation, the comfort of knowing we were all in this together. Now their lives were a performance, each act meticulously planned to impress. But at what cost? The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. Their harsh words, their actions weren't just about me. They were about control, about erasing the past they no longer wanted to acknowledge. I was the last reminder of a time when they weren't the center of the universe, when life was messy and real. As I sat in my small apartment, the hum 3 days. After my eviction, my inbox began to fill with emails from Michael and Jessica. At first, I ignored them, thinking they were just more of their disdain or perhaps an insincere apology. But the tone was different, desperate, almost frantic. "Emily, please, we need your help," one email read. "Something's gone terribly wrong," another said. Curiosity piqued. I opened the most recent one. It was from Jessica, her usual poise replaced by panic. "We've made a terrible mistake. Please come back. We need you." The shock of their plea was overwhelming. What could have happened to make them need me, the useless burden? I decided to return, not out of forgiveness, but out of a need to understand. When I arrived, the house was in disarray. Michael was pacing, his face pale. Jessica was on the phone, her voice shrill with anxiety. "Emily, thank God you're here," Michael said, his voice cracking with emotion. "We've lost everything." I looked around. The once pristine living room was a mess of papers, legal documents scattered everywhere. Jessica hung up the phone, her eyes red from crying. "It's our business, Emily. It's all gone." "What happened?" I asked, my voice steady despite the chaos. Michael ran his hands through his hair, a gesture of frustration I knew all too well. "We trusted the wrong people. Our investors, they've pulled out. There's been misconduct, financial irregularities. We're being investigated." Jessica, usually so composed, now looked like she might crumble at any moment. "We thought we had it all under control, but we didn't. We were so focused on the image, on the success, that we didn't see the cracks until it was too late. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here they were, the golden couple, now tarnished by their own ambition. "And you need me because," I prompted, still trying to piece together why they'd reached out to me. "We need your help to navigate this," Michael said, his gaze finally meeting mine. "You always had a way with words, with understanding people. We need you to help us communicate, to salvage what we can." Jessica nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. We've lost our way, Emily. We need your perspective, your compassion. The room was silent for a moment, the weight of their request hanging in the air. I looked at the remnants of their once perfect life, now in shambles. The house, which had been a stage for their performances, now felt like a set after the final act. "I'll help," I finally said, the decision surprising even myself. "But not for you, for the memory of what this family once was, for Mom and Dad." Michael's relief was palpable, but Jessica's expression was harder to read. There was gratitude. Yes, but also something else. A flicker of something that looked like regret. Over the next few days, I dove into the mess they'd created. I read through contracts, emails, and financial statements. I drafted letters to investors, crafted statements for the media, and even helped them prepare for meetings with lawyers. The more I learned, the clearer it became. Their business wasn't just a victim of bad luck or betrayal, it was a house of raw cards built on the shaky foundation of their own hubris. They had cut corners, ignored red flags, all in the pursuit of maintaining their image of success. One evening, as we sat in the dimly lit study, surrounded by the remnants of their empire, Michael spoke up. "We've been so blind, Emily. We thought we were invincible." Jessica, who had been quiet, added, "We forgot what was important. We forgot family." I nodded, understanding dawning on me. "You were so busy performing for everyone else, you lost sight of who you were." The air was heavy with the truth of my words. They had indeed lost their way, but perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for redemption. Not for their business, which was likely beyond saving, but for them as people, as my family. As I helped them navigate the legal and financial mess, I couldn't help but feel a strange sense of responsibility, not for their mistakes, but for the family we once were, the one that had been lost amidst their pursuit of perfection. The house was a mess, papers strewn about, furniture overturned. Michael, seeing me, rushed over, his eyes wide with fear. "Emily, thank God you're here." We didn't know where else to turn. Jessica hung up the phone, her hands shaking. "It's our business," she said, her voice breaking. "We've been scammed, all our savings gone. We thought we were investing in a sure thing, but it was all a lie." They explained how they had invested heavily in a startup, lured by promises of high returns. The company turned out to be a Ponzi scheme, and now they were facing financial ruin. I listened, my heart torn between the satisfaction of their downfall and the familial bond that still tugged at me. Could I really help them after all they had done? The air was thick with desperation. Michael's voice trembled as he recounted the details. "We were so caught up in the image, Emily. We didn't see the warning signs. We ignored the whispers, the doubts, because we wanted to believe in the dream." Jessica, her face pale, added, "We thought we were too smart to fall for something like this. But we were just as naive as anyone else." I looked around at the chaos, the remnants of their once gleaming empire now reduced to a battlefield of legal documents and financial despair. "And you expect me to fix this?" My voice was calm, but inside a storm of emotions raged. "We know we have no right to ask," Michael said, his eyes pleading. "But you're the only one who might understand. You've always seen through the facades, through the lies we told ourselves." Jessica reached out, her hand trembling. "We've lost everything, Emily. Our reputation, our savings, our pride. But maybe, just maybe, we can salvage something if you help us." The irony was not lost on me. Here I was, the useless burden, now their only hope. I took a deep breath, the weight of their request settling on my shoulders. "I'll do what I can," I said, my voice steady. "But understand this, I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for the memory of our family, for what we once were." Over the next few days, I immersed myself in their world of deceit and ambition. I sifted through contracts, emails, and financial statements, piecing together the puzzle of their downfall. Each document was a testament to their misplaced trust, their blind pursuit of wealth. One evening, as we sat in the dimly lit study, the gravity of the situation hung heavy in the air. Michael broke the silence, his voice raw with regret. We've been so blind, Emily. We thought we were invincible. Jessica, her usual poise shattered, whispered, We forgot what was important. We forgot family. I looked at them. These two people who had once seemed so untouchable. You were so busy performing for everyone else, you lost sight of who you were, I said, the truth of my words echoing in the quiet room. The air was heavy with the truth of my words. They had indeed lost their way. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was a chance for redemption. Not for their business, which was likely beyond saving, but for them as people, as my family. As I helped them navigate this crisis, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just about saving their business. It was about saving what was left of our family, about finding a way back to each other, even if it meant starting from the ruins of their former life. And so, I worked, not just to salvage their financial future, but to perhaps mend the broken bonds of our family, to find forgiveness, or at least understanding, in the ashes of their ambition. The climax came when Michael, in a moment of vulnerability, admitted, We were wrong about you, Emily. You've always been the smart one, the one who could see through the smoke and mirrors. Jessica, tears streaming down her face, added, We need your mind, your insight. Please, help us salvage what we can. I sat there, the weight of their plea heavy on my shoulders. Here was my chance for revenge, to leave them to their fate. But as I looked around at the chaos, at the remnants of our family home, I realized something. This wasn't just about them. It was about us, about family, flawed and fractured as it was. I agreed to help, not for them, but for the memory of what our family once was. Together, we began to piece together the financial puzzle, contacting lawyers, accountants, and even the authorities. The days blurred into nights as we worked tirelessly. Michael, with his usual charm now replaced by a desperate determination, was on the phone, his voice hoarse from explaining, pleading, and sometimes begging for leniency or support. Jessica, her once impeccable appearance now disheveled, was drafting emails, her fingers flying over the keyboard with a fervor I'd never seen. I took on the role of the mediator, the voice of reason. I drafted statements for the media, explaining the situation without revealing too much, maintaining a facade of control while internally I was piecing together the extent of their downfall. Each document I reviewed painted a clearer picture of their hubris. They had trusted too easily, ignored the red flags, all for the allure of quick success. Their business was a mirage, and now the desert of reality was closing in. One evening, as we sat in the study, the only light coming from the desk lamp, casting long shadows over the room, Michael looked at me, his eyes weary. Emily, I'm sorry for everything. Jessica, sitting beside him, her hand in his, nodded. We were so caught up in our own world, we forgot what really mattered. I felt the sincerity in their words, the regret that seemed to seep from every pore. I know, I said, my voice soft. But knowing isn't enough. We need to act. The next day, we met with a team of lawyers. The atmosphere was tense, the air thick with the scent of old books and coffee. The lawyers, stern and unyielding, laid out the grim possibilities. Bankruptcy was a looming threat, criminal charges not far behind. We need to be proactive, I suggested, my voice firm. We need to show we're cooperating, that we're not just victims but also taking responsibility. Michael and Jessica exchanged looks, a silent conversation passing between them. You're right, Michael said, his voice resolute. We'll do whatever it takes. The following weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and public relations efforts. I crafted press releases, managed social media, and even spoke to journalists, all while keeping our family's dignity intact. One night, after a particularly grueling day, Jessica came to me. Emily, I never realized how much you've always seen, how much you've always understood. I looked at her, the sister-in-law who had once dismissed me. I saw because I was on the outside, looking in. Sometimes that's the best view. As we continued our efforts, the house began to feel less like a battlefield and more like a war room. Papers were organized, strategies were formed, and slowly, a semblance of order returned. The question lingered in the air, unspoken but palpable. Would our efforts be enough to save them from ruin? We were navigating through uncharted waters, with no map but our collective will to salvage what we could. The future was uncertain, but in that moment, surrounded by the remnants of their empire, I felt a strange sense of unity. We were not just siblings or in-laws, we were a team, fighting for something bigger than ourselves. And as I looked at Michael and Jessica, their faces etched with the strain of the past weeks, I realized that perhaps, just perhaps, we could find. Our way back to each week's turned into months, and with each passing day, the weight of our collective efforts began to show signs of progress. Michael, Jessica, and I, we worked tirelessly, our minds focused on the task at hand. The financial mess they had created was vast, but my strategic mind, honed by years of navigating the complexities of freelance writing, began to find paths through the chaos. Michael, once the epitome of confidence, now approached each task with a humility I had never seen in him before. He learned to listen, to absorb the lessons from his mistakes. Jessica, too, changed. Her sharp edges softened as she grappled with the reality of their situation, her ambition now tempered with a newfound respect for the intricacies of business ethics. Together, we managed to recover some of the lost funds. It wasn't a complete restoration, but it was enough to keep the wolves at bay, to give us a fighting chance. The house, which had once been a symbol of their perfect life, now stood as a testament to our collective resilience. It was no longer just a showcase of success, but a place where hard lessons were learned, where family bonds were tested and, surprisingly, strengthened. One evening, as the autumn leaves began to fall, painting the lawn in hues of gold and crimson, Michael and Jessica approached me with an offer. "Emily," Michael began, his voice carrying a sincerity that was once foreign to him. "We've talked, and we want you to move back in. This house, it's not the same without you." Jessica nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of hope and regret. "We've been fools, Emily. We need you here, not just for your mind, but for your heart." I looked at them. These two people who had once cast me out, now standing before me with open hearts. The offer was tempting, a chance to reclaim a part of my life that had been so abruptly taken from me. But as I stood there, the cool breeze reminding me of the freedom I had found in my solitude, I realized something profound. "I'll always be here for you," I said, my voice steady, "but I need to live my life on my terms now." The decision was not easy, but it was necessary. I had found strength in my independence, a strength I wasn't ready to relinquish. As I walked away from the house for the second time, it was with a different feeling, not of rejection, but of liberation. The path before me was uncertain, but it was mine. My inbox, once filled with desperate pleas for help, now overflowed with emails of gratitude from investors, from the community, from those whose lives had been touched by our efforts to right the wrongs. And what would the future hold for Emily, now free from the shadows of her past? The answer was not clear, but one thing was certain. I was no longer the quiet, overshadowed sister. I had proven my worth, not just to Michael and Jessica, but to myself. The journey ahead would be mine to navigate, with lessons learned from both my family's failures and their redemption. I walked down the street, the autumn air crisp and invigorating, each step a declaration of my newfound independence. The city around me buzzed with life, and I felt a part of it, not just an observer, but a participant in its endless dance of possibilities. The future was an open book, and I, Emily Carter, was ready to write my own story, one where I was not just a footnote but the protagonist, forging my path with resilience, forgiveness, and an unyielding spirit. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.